My wife cheated on me with our neighbor, then secretly transferred $200, $0 from our joint account into her sister's name before filing for divorce, claiming I was abusive. Now we're in a bitter legal battle over the house and millions in assets, and I just found out she's been laundering money for years. I never thought I'd find myself in a situation like this. Honestly, it feels like I'm living a nightmare I can't wake up from. The kind of nightmare where everything you trust, everything you built your life around, suddenly turns out to be a lie. It all started with small signs, little things that didn't add up, things I brushed off at first because I didn't want to believe the worst. But then came the moment I saw it, the evidence that shattered my world. It was a Tuesday evening when I decided to check our bank account. I usually do it once a week just to keep track of the bills and expenses, but that day I noticed something odd. An unusual transfer of $200, $0 from our joint account into an account under my wife, Lisa's, sister's name. At first, I thought maybe it was some kind of mistake or a loan she was helping her sister with. But then I remembered how Lisa had been acting lately, distant, secretive, avoiding my questions. She'd been acting like she was hiding something, and I guess I finally found the proof. When I confronted her about it, she played it off like I was overreacting. "It's just some investment stuff," she snapped, her eyes narrowing. "You're paranoid. I've been handling the finances and I know what I'm doing." But I knew better. I'd seen her sneaking around with her phone, deleting messages, and now this transfer. It stank of something much bigger. I pressed her again and she finally snapped back with a sneer. "You don't need to know everything. Just trust me. I'm doing what's best for us." Yeah, right. The words sounded hollow and I could see the flicker of guilt behind her eyes. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying everything. Her sudden change in behavior, the way she was lying so effortlessly, the way she always managed to twist things around to make herself look innocent. I felt betrayed on a level I'd never experienced before. The woman I loved, the woman I'd trusted with my life, was hiding a secret that threatened to destroy everything. And the worst part, I had no idea how deep her lies went. Was she cheating on me? Was she laundering money? What else was she hiding? The next day, I started digging. I went through her emails, her text messages, her bank statements, and what I found was worse than I could have imagined. She'd been having an affair with our neighbor, Mark. I'd never suspected a thing. He was always the friendly guy next door, the guy who waved at me when I mowed the lawn. But apparently they'd been sneaking around for months. There were explicit messages, photos, even plans to meet up when I was away on business trips. She'd lied to my face about everything. The woman I thought I knew was nothing but a manipulative liar. It hit me like a punch to the gut. How could she do this? How could she betray me, cheat on me, then steal from us and try to cover it all up? I felt a mixture of rage, sadness, and utter disbelief. I couldn't believe I'd been blind to it for so long. And now, with this new revelation about her laundering money she'd been funneling for years, I realized this was way bigger than just infidelity. She was involved in something criminal, something dangerous. I decided I needed to confront her again, face to face. I wanted answers, real ones, not her usual lies. I was furious but also hurt, deeply hurt. How did I miss all of this? How did I not see the signs? The betrayal was layered, her cheating, her theft, her lies, and I knew I had to do something about it. But what? How do you fight someone who's been lying to your face for so long? How do you even begin to process that kind of betrayal? That's where I am now, standing at the edge of a dark abyss trying to figure out my next move. I know I can't trust her anymore, and I definitely can't stay silent. The truth is out, and I have to decide what comes next. But I'll tell you one thing, I've never felt so lost, so betrayed in my entire life. After I found out about her affair and the money transfer, everything changed. It was like my world was cracking open, and I was just standing there trying to hold the pieces together. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I went through her phone, her emails, our bank accounts again. I needed to know everything. The more I dug, the more I found out about her lies, her secrets, her manipulation. It was like peeling back layers of a toxic onion. I discovered she'd been lying about her whereabouts for months. Tell me she was working late, going to the gym, or visiting her sister, things I bought because I trusted her. But then I found receipts from hotels she never mentioned, messages with Mark that she tried to hide, and a series of payments to her sister. And it wasn't just the money transfer. She transferred hundreds of thousands over the years, all under the radar. She was laundering money, I realized. All that cash, all those transactions, were part of some elaborate scheme I'd never suspected. It hit me hard. I felt sick. How could she be involved in illegal activity? I felt betrayed all over again, but this time with a sense of dread. What if I was also involved unknowingly? Was I married to a criminal? And her affair, was that just a distraction? I couldn't make sense of any of it. My mind was racing, trying to process how deep her lies ran. I decided I needed to confront her again. This time I was calm but firm. I told her I knew everything: the affair, the money laundering, the transfer to her sister. I wanted her to explain herself. Her reaction was classic Lisa. She played the victim, said I was paranoid, crazy even. "You don't understand, Jim," she said, her voice dripping with false sincerity. "You're overreacting. I do everything for us. Mark's just a friend, and the money, it's investments, trust me. I was trying to secure our future." That was her typical bullshit, lying, twisting, gaslighting. But I wasn't buying it anymore. I saw right through her. The worst part was when she accused me of being abusive because I was questioning her all the time. That was her way of turning the tables, making me look like the bad guy. I'd never been abusive, never raised my voice, never laid a finger on her. But she was good at manipulating the narrative. She knew how to make herself look innocent, even as she was cheating, stealing, laundering money. I felt disgusted. I felt angry. I felt like I'd been played for a fool for years. By then I knew I had to get out. I couldn't stay with her, not after all this. But I also knew that I couldn't just walk away without protecting myself, my assets, and figuring out what her plans were. The house, the money, those were supposed to be our future, and now they were all in jeopardy. I started talking to a lawyer, trying to understand my rights. I also reached out to a private investigator I knew, someone who could help me follow her, see what she was up to. I had to find out if she was planning something else, if she had more hidden away. The emotional toll was brutal. I was furious, yes, but also heartbroken. I loved her once, and I thought she loved me. Now I saw her for what she really was: a manipulative, dishonest, selfish woman willing to destroy everything we built for her own gain. I felt like a fool for trusting her, for thinking we had a real partnership. That trust was gone now, shattered like glass. Every time I looked at her, I saw the lies, the betrayal, the greed. I knew I needed to make a decision. Do I fight for the marriage? Do I try to save what's left? Or do I cut my losses and walk away? Honestly, I was leaning toward leaving. I couldn't see a way back from this, not without her completely unraveling and exposing herself further. But I also knew that I had to be smart. There's a lot at stake, and I had to protect myself legally and financially. So here I am, standing at the crossroads, trying to figure out what's next. I don't trust her anymore. I don't know if she's still lying, still hiding stuff. All I know is that my life has been turned upside down, and I don't recognize the woman I thought I knew. The betrayal runs deep, and I'm not sure if I'll ever be able to forgive her, even if I decide to stay for some reason. All I can do now is prepare for the fight ahead, and hope I come out of this with some shred of my dignity intact. The days that followed were a blur of legal consultations, hidden cameras, and sleepless nights. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was living in some twisted soap opera, only this wasn't fiction. It was my life, and it was falling apart faster than I could keep up. Every new piece of evidence made me more certain that Lisa wasn't just cheating or stealing. She was orchestrating a full-blown betrayal that involved money laundering, fraud, and maybe worse. I started digging into her financial history more thoroughly. Her bank statements revealed a pattern of suspicious transactions: large cash withdrawals, transfers to offshore accounts, and payments to shell companies that I'd never heard of. It was clear she'd been laundering money for years, possibly even before we got married. The realization made my stomach turn. How could I have missed all this? How was I so blind? I thought I knew her, but I was staring at a stranger, someone capable of deception on a level I'd never imagined. I also discovered she'd been secretly transferring money into her sister's account, more than just the $200, $0. Apparently, there were smaller transfers over the years, all under the radar. Her sister wasn't just a victim here, she was complicit. I found emails where Lisa instructed on how to hide the transactions, how to avoid detection, how to make the money look legit. It was like a criminal operation. I couldn't believe it. My wife, the woman I'd trusted with everything, was laundering money, cheating on me, and lying through her teeth. Meanwhile, her affair with Mark was still ongoing. I found more messages, explicit, lewd, intimate. They'd been meeting up, sneaking around, planning their next rendezvous. I even found a schedule of her trips, which she never told me about. She'd been lying about everything, her whereabouts, her intentions, her entire life. It was like she had a double life I never knew about. And every lie she told, every secret she kept was another dagger in my heart. I decided I needed to confront her again, this time with undeniable proof. I arranged for a private investigator to follow her, to see where she was going, who she was meeting. I wanted to catch her in the act if possible. The day I got the report back, I felt my stomach tighten. She'd been meeting Mark at a hotel downtown, every week, sometimes more. They'd been spending hours alone, behind closed doors. The evidence was undeniable. I sat her down that night, my hands trembling. I showed her the photos, the messages, the bank statements. I wanted her to explain herself, but she just looked at me with that fake, innocent face of hers. "Jim, you're crazy," she said, her voice laced with false concern. "All of this is just a misunderstanding. You're paranoid. Mark is just a friend, and I'm not doing anything wrong." I stared at her, furious. I knew better. I'd seen enough to know that her lies were just getting more elaborate. That confrontation was the turning point. I realized I couldn't trust her anymore, not a single word. The woman I loved, the woman I thought was my partner, was nothing but a master manipulator. She was lying, cheating, laundering money, and probably more. I felt disgusted, angry, and betrayed all at once. But I also felt a strange sense of clarity. I finally saw her for who she truly was. I started making plans. I contacted a lawyer specializing in divorce and asset protection. I needed to secure my finances, protect what was mine, and figure out how to get out of this mess. I also told her that I knew everything, and I was done playing her game. I told her she could keep her lies, her affairs, and her illegal activities. I was done being a part of it. I was going to take everything I could and walk away. The emotional toll was heavy. I felt like I'd lost my wife, my trust, and maybe even a part of myself. I kept asking myself how I missed all of this. How could I have been so blind? Every time I thought about her, I felt a mix of rage and heartbreak. I'd loved her once, but now I saw her for what she really was, a manipulative, selfish woman who'd done everything she could to destroy us. But I knew one thing for sure: I wasn't going to let her get away with it, not without facing consequences. I was determined to fight for my rights, for my sanity, and for whatever shred of dignity I had left. This wasn't just about betrayal anymore, it was about justice. And I was going to see it through, no matter how ugly it got. The legal process moved quickly once I handed over all the evidence. My lawyer, a sharp, no-nonsense woman named Carol, told me to prepare for a long fight, especially since Lisa was clearly trying to spin things her way. The moment I presented her with the proof of the affair, the money laundering, and the transfer to her sister, the entire dynamic shifted. Lisa's facade cracked, and her usual bitchy, manipulative attitude faded into something more frantic, like a cornered animal. She started throwing accusations, claiming I was violent, abusive even. Every time she tried to twist things, I kept my cool. I knew her game. She was trying to distract me, to make me seem like the bad guy so I'd back down. But I had enough evidence to back my claims, and I wasn't going to let her manipulate me anymore. I told her straight, "You're done. I know everything, your affair, the money laundering, the transfer too. I'm filing for divorce, and I'm taking everything I can legally get." Her eyes flashed with fury, but she knew she was cornered. Meanwhile, I started talking to financial experts to trace all the money she'd laundered. It was staggering. She'd been funneling millions through a network of shell companies, offshore accounts, and fake loans for years. It was like discovering a criminal enterprise. hidden behind the veneer of our perfect life. I realized I had to act fast to freeze her assets, secure my own, and make sure she didn't hide or move anything more before the courts got involved. The divorce proceedings were brutal. Lisa fought dirty, trying to paint me as the abusive husband she claimed I was. She brought in her own lawyers, tried to get full custody of the house, and demanded I pay her alimony that I knew she didn't deserve. But I had the evidence. I had the proof of her affairs, her illegal activities, her lies. I presented everything in court, and it was clear she was trying to manipulate the system. I knew I had to stay strong, keep my head clear, and not let her drag me down into her chaos. One of the biggest shocks came when I discovered she'd been secretly transferring money into her sister's account to hide her assets. I found bank records showing dozens of small transfers, each under the legal reporting limit but adding up to hundreds of thousands. Her sister was in on it, helping her keep the money away from me and the authorities. That was a punch to the gut, trusting family, only to find out they were part of her scheme all along. It made me realize how deep her deception ran. I also learned she'd been laundering money through a series of real estate deals. She'd buy and sell properties under different names, moving the money around to avoid detection. She'd even used some of the stolen funds to buy luxury cars, jewelry, and expensive vacations. Every revelation made me angrier. How could she be so reckless, so heartless? I felt betrayed not just as a husband but as a man who thought he knew his own wife. Despite all this, I stayed focused. I hired forensic accountants to untangle her financial web, to trace every dollar she'd stolen or laundered. I wanted justice, not just for the betrayal but to make sure she paid for what she'd done. I also had to deal with the emotional fallout. I felt like I was living in a war zone, constantly on edge, waiting for the next bombshell. I was furious, disgusted, and heartbroken, all at once. Sometimes I wondered if I'd ever trust anyone again, or if I'd just become some bitter, paranoid shell of a man. Through it all, I kept reminding myself that I deserved better. I deserved honesty, loyalty, and respect, not this mess of lies and betrayal. I started to focus on rebuilding my life, on healing from the betrayal. I knew I couldn't change what Lisa did, but I could control how I responded. I cut ties with her family, changed my phone number, and set up new boundaries. I was done with her manipulations. I wanted peace, even if it meant starting over from scratch. And so the legal battle raged on. I knew Lisa would keep trying to manipulate the system, to spin her lies, but I was prepared. I had the evidence, the law on my side, and a renewed sense of purpose. I realized that sometimes you have to fight dirty to get justice. That's what I was doing now, fighting for what's right, for my dignity, and for the truth. I didn't know exactly how this would end, but I knew one thing: I was done being a victim. From now on, I was going to stand tall, no matter what came next. The months that followed were some of the toughest of my life. Every day felt like a battle, and I was constantly on edge, waiting for the next piece of her lies to surface. Lisa kept up her charade, trying to manipulate the court, trying to turn the tables in her favor with her fake tears and false accusations. But I had the evidence, and I made damn sure it all got presented. The courtroom became mine, and I knew I had to be relentless. One of the biggest surprises was when I uncovered her plan to move even more assets before the court could freeze everything. She had been talking to shady contacts, trying to transfer properties and offshore accounts. I caught wind of it just in time. I worked with my lawyer and forensic accountants to file an emergency motion, freezing her assets and halting her plans. It was a close call. If I hadn't acted fast, she might have gotten away with millions more. That moment made me realize how dangerous she was, how far she was willing to go to cover her tracks. Meanwhile, I was also dealing with the emotional fallout. Every day I felt like I was reliving the betrayal all over again. I'd loved Lisa once, believed in our future, and now I was fighting to keep what was left of it. I'd sit alone in my apartment, staring at the walls, wondering how someone I trusted so deeply could turn into this manipulative, money-hungry stranger. The anger was there, sure, but underneath it all was a profound sadness. I mourned the woman I thought I knew, and I wondered how I'd ever trust again. In the midst of all that chaos, I started leaning on friends and family who had always been there. I needed someone to talk to, someone who could remind me of my worth. My best friend, Mike, was a huge help. He listened, didn't judge, and kept me grounded. I also started therapy, which was a game changer. For the first time in months, I let myself feel the pain, the betrayal, the anger. It was ugly, but it was necessary. I realized I couldn't just bury it all and pretend I was fine. Facing the truth was the only way to move forward. Things with Lisa got even nastier when she accused me publicly of abusing her during our marriage. She filed for a protective order, claiming I was violent, even though there was zero evidence. It was her way of trying to manipulate the system to make me look bad. But I knew her game. I had the evidence that proved she was lying, screenshots of her affair, bank records showing her laundering money, and witness statements from people who saw her sneaking around. I was ready. I hired my own legal team to counter her accusations, and I made it clear I would fight her in court to clear my name. Throughout this nightmare, I also kept a close eye on the legal proceedings. Every day brought a new twist, another attempt by Lisa to sway the judge, another lie she tried to spin. But I stayed focused. I knew I had the truth on my side. I was determined to get full custody of the house, to secure my assets, and to make sure she paid for her crimes. I wanted nothing more than to put this all behind me and start rebuilding my life, free from her lies and manipulation. Looking back now, I realize how much I've learned. Trust is fragile and betrayal cuts deep. But I also learned that you can survive even the worst storms if you stay true to yourself, gather the right support, and fight for what's right. Lisa thought she could destroy me, but I refused to let her. I fought back with everything I had, emotionally, legally, financially. The road was long, and there were moments I wanted to give up, but I didn't. I knew I had to see this through. Because at the end of the day, I deserved justice and I deserved peace. And I wasn't going to stop until I found it. The final court hearing was the culmination of everything I'd fought for over the past year. I remember walking into that courtroom feeling a strange mix of exhaustion and relief. The room was tense, Lisa sitting there with her fake, bitchy smirk, trying to look confident. But I knew better. I had the evidence, every email, every bank statement, every secret transfer, and I was ready to lay it all out. My lawyer presented a comprehensive case that exposed her laundering scheme, her affair, and her attempts to hide assets from the court. When the judge finally asked Lisa to speak, her voice was shaky. She knew she'd been caught. She tried her usual manipulative tactics, claiming I was abusive, that I was trying to ruin her, but her words fell flat against the mountain of proof I had. The judge wasn't buying her lies this time. The evidence was irrefutable. She was ordered to pay back the stolen money, and the court awarded me full custody of the house and the majority of our assets. Her attempts to spin her lies and manipulate the system had failed spectacularly. As I left the courtroom that day, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. It wasn't just about the money or the house. It was about reclaiming my life, my dignity, and my sanity. I knew Lisa would continue to fight, but I was done playing her game. I had won the legal battle, but the emotional scars would take longer to heal. Still, I felt a sense of closure I hadn't felt in a long time. In the months that followed, I started rebuilding. I focused on my career, reconnected with friends and family, and finally allowed myself to move forward. I changed my phone number, cleaned out the old apartment, and made a conscious effort to leave the betrayal behind. I learned a lot from this experience about trust, deception, and resilience. I realized that sometimes you have to go through hell to find your way back to the light. Looking back, I can say that I'm grateful I caught her when I did. If I hadn't, who knows how deep her lies and crimes might have gone. I feel angry, yes, but also empowered. I fought for myself and for what's right, and I came out the other side stronger. I hope anyone reading this who's going through something similar knows they're not alone. Trust your instincts, gather your evidence, and don't be afraid to stand up for yourself. The truth may be ugly, but ultimately it sets you free.